Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, what we're going to do first is kind of take account of where we've been, because that's going to help us set up and understand where we're going with this near-term and long-term forecast. So while I've been talking, you've been looking at a map here that shows average temperature ranks for September through early October. And what we've seen here is that due to a lot of ridging in the west, things have been very warm there, and we've actually been quite a bit colder than normal. Now, this has been a bit of a problem because we have some crops that really need to finish under quite a bit of heat, and we've had much cooler than average conditions for quite some time here, including, of course, the impacts that Hurricane Ian had with cloud cover and a bunch of rainfall. Now, just thinking about that, I just went to the center of the state to Raleigh, and I wanted to look at GDDs. And what was interesting was for much of this season, we were running above the dotted line. That would represent average GDD accumulation. It's only been as of late, as you see right up and through here, that this line is flattened out. See the 2022 number? We're certainly well behind our last few years, except for 2021. We were actually lower than this in 2021 than we are currently. But the previous 4 years, we had accumulated more heat at this point in the season. Now, these blue bars actually represent the historical frost dates. So what's interesting is we're moving toward that time period, which is really going to reach a peak around that first week of November. For our first frost. That would be the normal first frost date. So we're going to be watching out for that very carefully because the cooler weather seems to be sticking around. In terms of precipitation, just again, I'm pulling this from Raleigh. You can see we are above normal by about 1.14 inches. And a year ago, we were considerably drier. The wetter years of 2020 and 2018 sitting here, but 2019 and 2020 were, 2019 and 2017 were both much drier than we currently are. So helps that Ian came through, at least on the overall water health side of this. Ian came through and delivered quite a bit of rainfall. Now, what I mean by that is I know that Ian's rainfall was disruptive, but when I just think about the longer term water health in the Carolinas, it was quite important. So when we look now at precipitation ranks by climate district, this really starts to tell the story. What you've got here is very, very dry conditions throughout the midsection of the United States. Harvest has been quick here for corn and soybeans, but we're having issues with barge traffic on very, very low water levels along the Mississippi and its tributaries. Much of our above normal precipitation here for the last 40 days or so has primarily come from the heavy rains we saw from Ian. But it's just an important note to kind of see the distribution of precipitation across the country. In the last 2 weeks, this is what it's looked like. So while we have, mainly because of Ian, seen places between 200 and 400% of normal precipitation, just get to the west and things have been extremely dry in this area. Soil moisture values look something like this morning. And so you can see wide open harvest windows in the midsection of the country, but our soil moisture values are much closer to average. Again, largely brought up here as of late because of Ian. Now, here's the other part of this. This is the newest drought monitor data. And what we can see is that North Carolina, with the exception of one small area here in the corner, is drought free. And if you remember before this, we did have drought across North Carolina, which again, as we talked about, was largely wiped out because of Ian's rains. So that just gives us this idea of where we've been, and now what I want to do is turn this over to where we're going. Because I have some concerns, especially about the heat side of this equation as we go forward. That all comes from this map right here, and I just left this out there next Monday. You notice there is a deep trough of low pressure around the Hudson Bay. It's around the Great Lakes. It's around much of the Midwest and New England. And where that trough comes from, let me take you now back to the beginning, is right here. You see the pattern is setting up in the near term with the deep trough that's here between Hawaii and Alaska. So the flow is going to run up over the top of it like this. So what happens is the colder air that's in these troughs in the Arctic and in the Bering Sea in Alaska will just love to slide down that. So as I play this forward, you're going to see through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the first of two deep troughs settling into the Great Lakes states. And that trough of low pressure and cold air just delivers quite a bit of it over to us. Now, we'll bring a front through and increase our rain chances middle and into this week, but notice into this weekend, and then getting out there to Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, the pattern is kind of unrelenting. So in terms of needing more heat, watch this 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies. Notice the cold air that comes running through here in the middle of this month of October, lasting through the third week, and even out there at the beginning of the fourth week. So October is going to go down, if I just go back and forth here, as a colder month for us while all the heat stays to the west. Now, on the precipitation side of things, let's just take a quick look at what to expect here from this morning's European model run. In South Carolina, we got chances for scattered storms through Tuesday. But here comes the main front on Wednesday. See it? And as that front comes slicing through, it's going to start to draw in moisture around this high pressure cell, which is sitting in through here. So the flow's coming around something like this. And so as that flow comes through, it looks as though Wednesday night into Thursday morning, Thursday midday, and even Thursday evening, we got chances for showers and storms. Now, I think there is the chance for some of these storms to be stronger as this front comes through. We're worried about that certainly here in the midsection of the country as well. But after that comes through, you can just see here wide open, dry conditions and high pressures in place until a second front likely comes through here on Sunday. And that's that second reinforcing shot at some cooler air. Sorry for the noise in the background. My sewer has to be replaced, and so that's the excavator out there working. But I wanted to get this report out to you, so hopefully you can't hear it too bad. Now, with deeper troughs of low pressure sitting here, that's where we get this concern of having some colder air coming in behind this. So let's go take a quick look and get some numbers from it here. First, total accumulated precip. When that front comes through late this week, there is the chance that some of these storms put down better than a half inch to an inch and a half of rain. It's not showing up yet on the forecast, okay? It's not yet showing up really well here. But I'll just tell you, you know how this works. These fast-moving fronts come through, and they do have the chance for delivering quite a bit of rainfall. But outside of that, we're generally looking at less than a half inch, unless you get hit by one of those bigger storms later this week. Now, into week 2, remember, all the way out to the 20th of October, we're still dealing with this flow pattern. So what we need to understand here is that this produces a lot of convergence in the flow aloft and drier air and cooler air that comes sweeping around. The heat is here and the heat is there. And by the way, if we saw a pattern like this setting up and it was the middle of winter, this would be the one that would really just race those nor'easters up the coast. So we're going to watch out for this pattern for a while now. But as it stands, it's fall, so it delivers drier conditions and no strong coastal storm systems just yet. That'll be more of a winter feature. So getting all the way out there to the 23rd of October, we just see that after the front clears, this one later this week, the one on Sunday tries to come through into Monday, then we're drier after that. So let's talk about the temperature side of this before we stretch this out into a long-range view. This map shows the probability of having a frost over the next 7 days, so primarily confined to the Appalachian Mountains, but broader frost events continue to occur here across the western and northern Corn Belt and the northern plains. But this wouldn't be considered a late event at this point for this area. To see what those temperatures are going to do, take a look. Here's high temperatures. We're going to shade this according to anomalies. So it's still a bit of a cooler day today. As we then work our way into Tuesday and Wednesday, we go back over toward normal, but you're going to see the front really advance on Thursday. And this is the day we're going to be watching out for the showers and storms to start to come through. And then behind it on Friday, we got highs in the mid-60s, for example, in Raleigh. So then cooler weekend, and here's that second reinforcing shot of colder air coming in on Sunday that's going to push over us on Monday. Okay, we've got this idea about the near-term forecast. And I can make a case to say that a lot of what's driving this is the behavior of our La Nina. It's the biggest teleconnection. Now, we can't blame everything on La Nina, but it's certainly going to be a factor. So the trade winds are still very strong in this area. We've got a lot of cold water that has lately upwelled in this region. We've got a lot of warm water in the North Atlantic and the North Pacific. And I think the net effect of this is to get the atmosphere to kind of bunch up and block up. Now, what we'll be watching for, again, just coming back to these graphics, are the trade winds. Very strong trade winds through about the 21st. Now, they're still there and present, but the westerly wind bursts coming out of the Indian Ocean are helping to push the MJO over into phases 6 and 7. Now, what is important about that is we can historically correlate this to our weather patterns. So if we see the MJO, which is right now in phase 5, bumping out into phase 6 and 7 like this, well, this is what it means historically. When it comes out into phase 6, we tend to favor more troughs of low pressure along the East Coast. Now, in the middle of winter, this produces massive winter storms. But right now, it just gives us flow like this. And then if it comes out into phase 7, it even becomes more amplified. See that? So what it means is that the near-term pattern and what we expect, at least through the end of October, is going to favor more, is going to favor more of this than anything. So recovering to have really warm days, lots of them stretched together for the crop to finish, and avoiding even an on-time or early frost seems less likely this year. What is interesting is that the models still want to keep the precipitation pattern looking wet in the west, wet in the midsection of the country, but overall there's a couple of regions in through here they're saying that are drier. Now this map is going to update late today on Monday, and I include it in my Monday morning or my Tuesday morning reports if you want to see it. But this is the outlook from October 20th to November the 20th. I personally feel, based upon changes in the Pacific jet stream, that this map may not verify just as you see it right here. I do think that especially in the next 20 plus days, we're going to see colder conditions, but possibly drier in the Carolinas. But I think the whole pattern is going to start to shift around soon. Now in the longer term, this is the biggest information and most important information we've got. We expect the La Nina to be reaching its bottom soon. It'll probably be some point here in late October and early November before starting to make the transition back toward neutral conditions after we start the new year. We expect neutral conditions by spring. Now, every single model forecast I've seen from every long-range forecasting agency, government, private forecasting group, they've all kind of bit into this outlook, which I'm showing you here from NOAA. What we need to ask is, what does this mean? So I'm going to look at it on the precipitation side of things, because this model will not be able to give us an accurate representation of the temperature fluctuations through winter. It just won't. So we're going to look at the precipitation side of it. Could we favor a drier October, November, December? We could. As we go forward and just look a month ahead of that now, November, December, January, and then December, January, February. This pattern where to the south of this line things are favored drier, that is La Nina to the T. This is what La Ninas do. They tend to produce a jet stream pattern that comes into the northwest and then ejects through the Ohio River Valley. Okay? That was one of the big reasons why last year, if we just kind of take a look at this here, going into fall through the beginning of the new year, we were drier. Same setup as a year ago. Now, after that, there we go. This is what I'll be watching to see if we transition to. At the beginning of the new year, if the La Nina fades, that means we not only have this component of the jet stream, the polar branch, but we start to see the subtropical branch taking over as well. And the two tend to work together, and they really tend to increase our chances for late winter precipitation. So February, March, and April, now you start to see that the Mid-Atlantic down to the Carolinas is showing up wetter. Now, this was the data that was released Tuesday. What I want to do is I would like to now also kind of complement this with the newest updated data from the Climate Prediction Center. So they run a suite of models called the NMME, the National Mesoscale Model. Getting all my model names mixed up today. So what are they looking at in terms of precipitation rate? This is their November, December, January. You see they've got that La Nina look, that drier La Nina look for early winter. But as we go back and fast forward, what about into December, January, February? Still there. In fact, this is La Nina to the T. But we need to add in what that spring looks like. So let's jump out here to this season. Now, do you see that February, March, and April? They've pushed the drier conditions farther south. And this could be the time period where the subtropical jet begins to really have an impact. And if it does, that could give us a wetter end of winter and start to spring. So those are the main factors I'm going to be watching for the next several weeks. Now, why didn't I talk about temperatures? Well, because if I'm already able to see, let's go back to it here. There we go. If I'm already seeing the ability for the North Atlantic to block up, that could happen at any point in winter because of all the warm water that's still in place here. And that could give us a widely varying North Atlantic oscillation, which dramatically changes our temperatures. The second part of this is the polar vortex. It's trying to take shape right now, but it's struggling a bit. And weaker polar vortexes tend to let a lot of cold air out, which means we just don't yet know if this is going to be the scenario going forward. I will tell you one thing I'm concerned about, and I'm going to go see this new data here. Let's look at global temperatures for season 3. Yeah, these maps, I wish they would change their projection on it. But they do have you for mild for late winter. But what I'm concerned about is this. Much of Europe, it's, here's one part of it, here's the other. I think they're way too biased warm here for winter. I'm concerned about a very cold winter in Europe at this point. Since we're international here, I thought I'd also just come back and let's show you, let's go to December, January, February global precipitation rate. And some of the big concern is down here into Argentina and southern Brazil. See how dry the models are there? They're wetter north, but drier south. And that's exactly the forecast we've got right now. Over the weekend, the models continue to trend drier for parts of Paraguay, Uruguay. This is Rio Grande do Sul in southern Brazil. This is the Paraná River, and this is Argentina. It has been dry here. They've had drought issues here. In the next 10 days, the front stalled out from Santa Catarina through Paraná into Mato Grosso do Sul, eventually getting over into parts of Bolivia. It's wetter across big sections of Mato Grosso, but still drier here where we're waiting on the monsoon to get going. That's normal though. This isn't uncharacteristic to not see the monsoonal precipitation fill in this region just yet. But as it stands, the wetter conditions we've seen in Mato Grosso has got them, really going. The average planting pace would be about almost 11% right now. They're almost to 19. A year ago, they were over 20%. So we're continuing to see a relatively quick plant for much of South America. But to give you one last thing to look at here, there it is. Here's South America's forecast all the way through the end of November. Much wetter north, very dry south, which echoes what we just talked about. So we've got a lot of global things to be keeping an eye on. And by the way, just to toss one more thing in there, the drought in Asia is expected to continue as well along and south of the Yangtze River, a major global disruptor here too. So I better stop there before I just keep rambling on and on about global weather issues, but this gives you an idea of the bigger things I'm watching. I hope you all have a good week. I'll talk to you again next Monday. Thanks.